The Saga of ShaHaNon, Book 2, Emperors and Exiles. Chapter 5, The Prince. Prince Theradon leaned back in his chair, his foot on the ebony and gold low table. His battered boot was rough, still muddy, and leaving marks in the carved edge. Mud was crumbling onto the polished top and into the fine rug below. Fallon Harold shifted in his seat, trying not to notice the damage to his furniture. Forcing a smile, he lifted his gaze to the prince and heir to the kingdom of Awans. It was hard to imagine that the man across from him was the prince at all. Harold had just come to court before Theradon had vanished for a year. At that time, the prince had been a thin, weak man dressed in lace and fear. Now he looked as uncivilized as his boots. He wore traveling clothes, and not of the noble sort. Layered, weather-stained leather, wool, heavy cotton, and armed with a set of daggers, made him look more like a footman, and not at all a member of the House of Lords. The daggers were not just any daggers, but long, wicked things with ancient-style wooden handles. They hung off his hips on thin brass chains and threatened to damage the fabric of Harold's chair. It was hard for the counselor to take his eyes off them. The past decade had changed the man. There were a few whispered rumors to that end, but to see him in person was astounding. Harold could not help but notice the shift in the prince's build, almost as if he had finally hit puberty in his 70s. He did not look like his image captures at all. Theradon was not normally seen or commented on much, unless it was as a joke. However, with him sitting here, Harold felt something very deep had shifted inside the once sickly prince. There was something in the man's eyes that was wiser, smarter, and more aware than he was given credit for. Something about him was intimidating and powerful. Harold could not help but think the court was very wrong about their assumptions. Theradon swung an amulet back and forth around his fingers. It flashed with gold and gems, some pretty trinket the man obviously cared little for. Everything about him seemed to say that he cared little for much of anything, including his appearance. He had fallen from whatever grace he might have ever held since his year-long disappearance, from where he had come back half insane, short a wife, and changed. The rumor was he had been in warped lands, but none knew where. Harold could see why that rumor had started. Theradon looked as if he had been to forbidden territories, drank waters of magic streams, and been touched by warped winds. He was changed, and that much anyone could see if they looked.
"The wine should be here any moment,"
Harold said for lack of anything else to say. He had a hard time admitting that he was a bit afraid of the man across from him. Every time he had ever joked at Theradon's expense seemed to whisper at him.
"So, what can I do for your highness?"
he asked, wishing the man would leave. The long-haired man seemed not to hear him for a moment, but caught the amulet in his hand like some child's game. He teetered his chair on its back legs and added his other foot to the edge of Harold's table.
"You know that the laws of the church tell us very clearly what a man is and is not allowed to do,"
Theradon said, in an almost distracted way.
"Yes, that is the way of the church."
"Did you know, Counselor?"
Theradon looked from the amulet he seemed to study a moment to the man who sat across from him.
"That by the laws of Awans, many things that are called law by Jerome are in contradiction."
The laws of Awans answer to the church. One set of laws is not separate from the other. Awans bows to the church, as does all the world.
Harold countered carefully.
"The laws of Awans are of Awans, and the laws of the church are of the church. It is well known that the laws of the kingdoms are different. We are unlike them even more, as we have become a race very like Pertons, but not the same. You and I, we are very much of that race. Our bloodlines are as ancient as the mountains."
"What is your point?"
Harold asked as nicely as he could.
"You talk dangerously close to heresy,"
he tried to say lightly, but there was nothing light or amusing about the topic. Harold had to be careful and very aware of such things in his life. There was just no way he could dare to cross that very dangerous line. Theradon laughed. He put his feet on the floor, swung his amulet once around, then caught it in his hand again. He leaned forward on one knee.
"Heresy depends on your religion, my friend. Now you and I, we are clearly Awans. Look at you.
He gestured at the counselor.
Every bit an Arwen's, fair and strong, tall and gifted in magics that others do not have.
I have titles to use such magic,
Harold said, suddenly more than just a little nervous.
I am sanctioned to study it.
Of course you are,
the prince said, as the servant brought wine for them.
Thank you, dear.
He smiled at the woman as he took the glass. His manner shifted into something very different in front of her, almost shy. But once she was no longer looking at him, Theradon ran his fingertip around the rim of the glass. She set another down for Harold. With a curtsy, she left them with a new bottle on the table.
It is a God-given right,
he said very firmly as he leaned back in his chair. He lifted his gaze to the man across from him.
You seem nervous, Harold. Do I make you nervous?
Harold forced a smile.
Certainly not, just honored at your presence,
The younger man said, trying to seem like it wasn't a lie. He took a sip of his wine, feeling his stomach knot up.
Nonsense,
Theradon said.
You are likely mortified at just about everything I seem to be or say. Not to mention you are too gifted not to pick up on other things as well, even if you don't know what that is yet. Also, I am a very good-looking man.
He laughed at some private joke.
Why are you here? What can I do for you?
Harold asked, wishing this was over. He took a sip of his wine, praying that the prince would get to the point and leave. He felt like he was being watched, and that at any moment guards would rush in, accuse him of black magics, haul him away to horrid places, and torture him until his soul was shattered. He began to even wonder if this was truly Theradon, and not some impostor playing to be him, in order to set Harold up and make some fun for the queen.
By the laws and ways of Aowens, as recorded in stone and undeniable, and accepted by the angels themselves, it is allowed for a man to love whomever he wishes.
Theradon lifted his gaze with a powerful focus. Harold shifted. He met the man's eyes, expecting to see nothing but insanity and drifting thought, but he found something else entirely. It felt as if the world shifted under his feet, and he saw something that few whispered rumor of, the hidden power of the prince. Harold felt as if every secret that he held hidden in his soul was exposed, and that he faced a man as powerful as the tide.
Arwen's does not have arranged marriages,
Harold said carefully.
I do not see how that law matters to me.
He swallowed hard, wanting to look away, but unable to do so. He felt almost captured, as if he had been drawn into a magic that was far beyond him. He was like an unaware child before a god. His heart was pounding, and he felt like he needed to warn Brian and prepare to run. Theradon leaned back, releasing Harold from the soul-binding look. He swirled his wine, looking almost the age he truly was, and for a moment shockingly noble and handsome under the shaggy beard and wild hair.
I have a proposition to make you,
he said as if it was nothing.
Let me start with saying that I have met your bodyguard. It must be very hard to make him stand at your back when you go to royal parties. It must be very difficult for him to be ignored by you as well. To walk behind you like a well-trained dog must hurt a man like that.
I do not know what you are saying,
Harold lied, desperately trying to hide his nerves. It was unthinkable to let his secret out in the open, but his mind could not even shift from the magic that seemed to bind him a moment ago. The fear of the politics and religious backlash, if anyone knew his true relationship with Brian, was almost unthinkable. Harold had the terrifying thought that if Theradon asked him about it, he would not be able to deny it directly.
Oh, I know that you do,
the prince said.
That part does not matter. What matters to me is that you are far more than you pretend to be, and have far more power than you let on.
He suddenly smiled with a very mischievous twinkle in his eyes.
I also know that you hate my mother almost as much as I do,
he added, as if commenting on the weather. Harold didn't know what to say. He sat in his chair, gripping his glass of wine. He knew the Queen Mother, and he hated her. She had found him as a child and taken him in, but what once seemed a blessing had become a hellish cycle of abuse so dark that it still made him wake, screaming from nightmares at times. He often wondered if the way he was now was not a result of the things that woman had done to him as a young boy. Part of his political power came from the fact that she owned him on a certain level. When she needed him, there was nothing he could do but obey. He prayed for nothing more than to be rid of her.
You stand at my side, and you get to hold the hand of whomever you wish. You can openly give the title of consort to your rather handsome bodyguard.
Therodan said with a very sane look in his eyes. The prince was very serious and very certain. Harold bit his lip. This was a very odd day. He barely felt that he was able to think.
To even say such has gotten men executed,
The nervous counselor said.
The church punishes the wrong of men.
Yet you do it.
Therodan said pointedly, and not at all upset.
You have wrestled that war already, and you know in your soul that it is right for you. You are Arwen's. It is your right.
Not even you have the authority to say such. To do so will have you handed to the church to be punished. The false thoughts of the cults of old are to be purged.
Do you truly think the king shall sit in his throne that much longer? He is old, tired, and not in control of his own bowels.
The queen will rule in his wake. I pray he lives long,
Harold said, feeling a bit ill at the thought of the queen in power. It had to be pointed out to the prince before he got them both sent to the pits. No one had any illusions that the prince would truly follow the king to the throne.
No, she won't.
Therodan shook his head.
If you hate her, if you love Arwen's at all, or any part of Pert as the angels hold it, then you will stand with me. Think about it.
Therodan said softly, leaning forward again.
If you think for a moment that it would be nice to stand up and say who and what you are, to wear the belts of your rank, not as a social puppet of a corrupt empire, but as the sorcerer that you are, then see to it that the warehouse on Lower 3rd Street and Dock Street 5 is searched. In the back, under a large crate, is a trapdoor. Bring several priests of rank with you and get it open. Make sure you have crystals to record what you find and make sure they get out to the public. You do that, Harold, and you won't have to sleep alone in your bed while he sleeps in the hallway like a dog.
Therodan rose to his feet.
Oh, and do it tonight.
Why?
Harold rose.
What's down there?
Things that should not be,
Therodan said, looking suddenly very serious and very troubled.
You will gain a great deal of power for discovering it.
He took a drink of the wine and smiled.
Oh, and this is for you.
He tossed Harold the amulet.
You should put it on. It will match your outfit rather well.
He turned and left the hall, leaving a trail of crumbling mud across Harold's fine Dakin rugs. Harold sat, holding the amulet for a long time, debating what he was going to do with the visit of the prince. Part of him wanted to ignore it and go about his life, but there was something about it all. There was something hidden in Therodan's eyes. There was something deep and powerful about him. Harold took a slow, deep breath and set the chain about his neck, sliding the gold under his robe front. He would go, and he would see. If it was nothing, then it would be nothing. But if the prince was, by chance, the hero Arwen's and all Pert prayed for, then it was worth being there tonight. For the chance to be able to have Brian stand with him, not behind him, would be worth a quick trip to Dock Street.
Brian,
He called.
can you get a hold of Bishop Tenlar and tell him I have something he might be interested in?